Katherine Paterson was born on October 31st, 1932. She is still alive and very much a part of the Young Literature Society that we have here, growing in the United States and abroad, because Katherine Paterson was not born in the United States. In fact, she was born in Qingjin, China, where her parents were missionaries. She also lived in Japan for 4 years. Katherine never grew up thinking that she was going to be a children's book author. In fact, that was far from her mind. It isn't until she took on a project at her local church that she saw herself being drawn to writing and saw herself taking on the craft. Actually, some of her language has been prohibited. As far as the books and the texts within schools, they outlaw some of her books. She is often asked about the language that some of her characters use because some of her books are banned based on the language and other content. She feels that it is more important to tell good stories in an honest way than to try to teach appropriate behavior, and she knew many people who spoke the way her characters do. So she wanted to make sure that her writings were true and natural as much as her abilities would allow her to write, so that way she could convey a true self in her characters. Many of Katherine's first titles were set in Japan, which she enjoyed rather immensely. She loved being a part of the culture and felt very near and dear to it. When asked recently if she would incorporate other novels of Japanese writing and Japanese culture into her folklore tales, such as the Mandarin Duck, of which she had produced, she said she wasn't sure. She loved writing about Japan, but she felt a bit shy about it at this point because it was a culture that she had not been originally naturally born into. When she wrote the novel set in Japan, it was close to the time when she used to live there. And now, she doesn't live there anymore. That was 40 years ago. She said that Japan has changed a lot since then, and so had she. But still, the backdrop of Japan, China, and all of those glorious places that had been a great part of her life in the beginning were to be the inspiration of many of her first original title books, of which we will be discussing later. Katherine Paterson now lives in Vermont with her husband and her 4 grown children. Katherine Paterson loves Vermont, and she loves that she's an American citizen now, and the fact that she's able to spread all of her wondrous books throughout the world. One of her first earliest novels was The Sign of the Chrysanthemum. It was about a boy named Muna, in his desperate search for the father he had never seen, leads the 13-year-old to danger and adventure in the crowded, colorful capital city of 12th century Japan. But where should he look for him? He was unsure. And how would he recognize him? His father left before Muna was born, and his mother is now dead. All that the boy knows of his father is that he is a great warrior, a samurai, and that he bears on his shoulder a chrysanthemum tattoo. Wars between 2 powerful clans divide the city, making a search more difficult and dangerful. Muna is torn between his respect for Fukuji, the brilliant swordsmith who takes him into his home, and his loyalty to Kanobu, a former samurai who is now an outlaw. Tempered by fire and sword, Muna finally discovers who he really is. Jip, his story, also written by Katherine Paterson, is a book that she is quite fond of as well. It received Scott Odell Awards for Historical Fiction 1997, Parents' Choice 1996 Storybook Award, Parents' Choice 1999 Paperback Book Honor. Jip could not understand why no one had claimed him after he tumbled off a wagon on the West Hill Road when he was a small child. Brought to the town for a farm, Jip was content to tend to the animals and do chores until the day the lunatic arrived. Putz rages in his padlocked wooden cage terrified the residents, but when the old man was lucid, he sang sweetly and let the boy take care of him. More menacing to Jip was the weasel-like stranger who kept unexpectedly appearing. Who was he, and how could his puzzling story that he had been sent by a grieving parent to find his long-lost son, who might well be Jip, be true? Then all of a sudden things changed for Katherine Paterson. She received her first Newbery Award, and all of a sudden she was more famous than she could ever imagine. I guess Newbery puts you on the map, she realized. Katherine Paterson received the Newbery Medal Award in 1981 for Jacob Have I Loved. Also, she received the ALA Notable Children's Book 1976 to 1980 for the book, School Library Journal Best Books of 1980 as well, Best of the 80s WA Novels English Journal Award, and Best of the 80s ALA Book List. Jacob Have I Loved, but Esua Have I Hated. With her grandmother's taunt, Lois knows that she, like the biblical Esau, was the despised elder twin. Caroline, her selfish younger sister, was the one everyone loved. Growing up on a tiny Chesapeake Bay island in the early 1940s, angry Lois reveals how Caroline robbed her of everything: her hopes for schooling, her friends, her mother, even her name. While everyone pampered Caroline, Wheeze, her sister's name for her, began to learn the ways of the watermen and the secrets of the island, especially of old Captain Wallace, who had mysteriously returned after 50 years. The war unexpectedly gave this independent girl a chance to fulfill her childish dreams to work as a waterman alongside her father. But the dream did not satisfy the woman she was becoming. Alone and unsure, Lois began to fight her way to a place where Caroline could not reach. Then all of a sudden, it seemed like Katherine was on a roll. Her next book, The Great Gilly Hopkins, also received a Newbery Honor Award in 1979. Was a National Book Award in 1979 honoree. It also received the Honor Book Jane Addams Children's Book Awards 1979, Christopher Award 1979, American Library Association Notable Children's Book 1978, and School Library Journal Best Book of 1978. At 11, Gilly is nobody's real kid. If only she could find her beautiful mother, Courtney, and live with her instead of in the ugly foster home where she had just been placed. How could she, the great Gilly Hopkins, know throughout the country for her brilliance and unmanageability, be expected to tolerate Mame Trotter, the fat, nearly illiterate widow who is now her guardian, or for that matter, the freaky 7-year-old boy and the shrunken blind black man, who are also considered part of the bizarre family. Even cool Miss Harris, her teacher, is a shock to her. By the time Katherine was ready to begin college, she spent 4 years at King College in Bristol, Tennessee, doing what she loved best: reading English and American literature, and avoiding math whenever possible. Her dream of becoming a movie star never came true, but she did a lot of acting all through school, and the first writings, for which she was very applauded for, consisted of the plays that she wrote for her 6th grade friends to act out. It seems that her life as a writer really began in 1964. The Presbyterian Church asked her to write some curriculum materials for 5th and 6th graders. Since the church had given her a scholarship for study, and she had married instead of going back to work in Japan, she felt that she owed them something for their money, so she began writing. By the time the books were published, she had moved 3 more times, acquired 3 children, and was hooked on writing. Finally, Katherine Paterson was quoted as saying, "Eventually a character or characters will walk into my imagination and begin to take over my life. I'll spend the next couple of years getting to know them and telling their story. Then the joy of writing far outweighs the struggle, and I know beyond any doubt that I am the most fortunate person in the world to have been given such work to do."